this is March 26, 2017. I'm going to do here this lesson, Moses and the Glory. From Exodus chapter 33, verse 16. His people are having problem, people are fighting over this, and they're actually teaching that the glory that Moses saw was the actual Son of God. So they're saying Jesus. I'm not sure why the text does not say anything about Jesus. But you have got the newer ones of us, returning Israelites, who are feeding off the teachings of the elders in Israel, who have been in this thing for a long time, who were influenced by Christianity and never let it go, because not everything falls off of all of us at the same time. And because they are elders, we feel we must believe them. No, do not believe them. Believe the Most High. Don't go the wrong way because somebody's telling you the wrong thing. Because that's the problem Israel had. They believed their teachers in biblical times and got kicked out of the land because they made a mistake. They were believing their priests and kings instead of believing the Most High. That's why the Most High says even a lying prophet should die, because he's going to cause you to believe something. And the Most High is pointing out that what you should believe is not the word of the teacher, but it is the word of the Most High. Don't believe the word of the elder. Believe the word of the Most High. Now, your belief in the words that your teacher or your camp leader is telling you is going to happen if it turns out that they are teaching what the Most High says. But your focus should be on believing what the Most High said, because somebody can get it wrong or somebody can deceive you. And believe me, I've said it before, when they are growing their large camps and they're making mad money, they're damn well not going to stop so you can get the truth. I'm not. Why? Because I understand this isn't about teaching to try to overpower people. This is a lie that you're fighting against. That's what I'm doing. I'm teaching against a lie. I'm fighting down the lie so people can come to truth and to understanding. And we are still brethren. We're all trying to make it. What I don't know in another era, you should teach me strongly as well so that I come on board with the truth. So you're looking at just under 3.5 years. And when I look at this camp, they're teaching, they're like expert with Torah. I felt so small talking to them. Because I'm like, man, what if they say certain stuff from a Torah perspective that I haven't learned yet? And I can't, But I'm not afraid. Why? Because when you studied and you know the topic well enough, you're not going to be afraid. You are afraid because of a lack of preparation. When you have the truth, you are afraid because of a lack of preparation. If you know the truth, you must prepare. So I'm not afraid. No one has as yet been able to strike down the teachings I'm given. Even the people who have more Torah knowledge than me for more years, it is impossible. I come from too many angles, common sense angles, with this Jesus is fake stuff. I don't teach it like the rest of the videos I hear that talk about Jesus straight from just the scriptures alone. I come from common sense perspectives to show that from a common sense everyday manner, it cannot be possible that this Jesus is really sent from the Father. So now, that Son of God, or Jesus, was the actual one in the Old Testament who appeared to Moses in Exodus chapter 33. So let's look at it. Moses here in Exodus 33, verse 16. For wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not in that thou goest with us? Because the Most High was upset with the people, right? He's like, go fight on your own or do whatever, like I'm not, So shall we be separated, I and that people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. That's interesting to note here, that Moses is saying here that it will be known all over the earth that we are your people, because there is a separation of us from the people of the earth, based on our understanding with the Most High and our serving the Most High. But what we find is with this Hebrew Mashiach from 2,000 years ago, somehow he does not allow the children of Israel to be separate from the world based on his teachings or his ministry or his so-called revelation to them. You're going to get the most silly response from a well-learned Torah teacher who believes in Jesus or Yahushua. That's going to say something crazy to you about that. Or he's reaching out to Gentiles as well, or he said whatever. No. If the Most High is showing that he is just for this people, Israel, he separates them and they are different. So anyone getting anything that they call salvation, they are going to come to be among Israel and get part of that blessing of being protected by the Most High, right? Like how it says that strangers would come and sojourn and they stay. Then if they love the ways of the people of Israel and they want to learn their laws, learn the Torah, and give their heart and their lifestyle to the ways of the Most High, the teachings of the Most High, then they get included in Israel. And so they get that salvation or that protection from the Most High. That's how it goes, right? But it's not their whole nation that's being sought after. It's just them. They come to sojourn there. They're working there for a year or two, doing trade business, whatever they're doing, and they just start living there and so on. And they take on the lifestyle of the Israelites. But this New Testament Elohim, who says he and his Father are one, somehow has a different effect. It's funny that no matter what happened in the Old Testament, this Old Testament God still manages to keep his people separate to the point where when they became, by their own choice, not his, by their own choice, like the Gentiles, like the other nations, he said, get out. You are no longer separate. Get out of my land. And he kicked them out. So he tries to keep them separate. They were even supposed to be in their own separate land. They are separated by land, and they're separated by their thinking. They are separated by Torah, which nobody else has. They are separated by the wisdom of the Most High. They are separate. But Jesus in the New Testament, or Yahushua, if you get offended with my using Jesus, some of you are just so silly with that, because he's the same person, the same book, no matter if it's Hebrew or English name, the same stories he shares, the same miracles he shares, it's the same person. But he in the New Testament, this new Elohim, he somehow does not separate the children of Israel. He groups them all together with all the Gentiles in the Roman Empire. So anybody now. Because that's what the New Testament apostles are basically let us know. If you go through the New Testament, no matter how much you want to say they were reaching out to Israel, they bring the New Testament across in a way where this Jesus is just for everybody. And it's silly to me, these Jesus teachers in the Hebrew camps who are talking about, it's just, you just don't understand, brother. You just don't understand. What is there to understand? Your Jesus is all power. All power is given to me in heaven and in earth. And his people flee from persecution and run over into Africa and leave their Jesus knowledge behind, because I don't know who's going to prove that the Israelites set up a massive Jesus or Yahushua empire in Africa and take off. So you're telling me that when Jesus knowledge is left with the New Testament in the parts of the Roman Empire, that they magnify this Jesus knowledge and have the power, or can access the power of Jesus to magnify this salvation through Jesus, through this Hebrew Messiah, and spread this all over the world, as many places as they could, until there's even European conquest and all that, just spreading Jesus or Yahushua like wildfire. They can have access to do that, even though sometimes they had difficulties in war, and sometimes their soldiers were killed and so on. And they can spread Yahushua like wildfire from the New Testament. They hijack your Jesus, hijack your Yahushua, your Yahawashai, and they do all these great things with him in spreading his good news of his gospel, supposedly. But the Hebrew Israelites who fled into Africa from the Romans, they can't go with their own Jesus or Yahushua Elohim into Africa where they fled and set up a great Yahushua empire there like the Romans did and let Yahushua take off with a big movement and take over all of Africa with the message of the good news of the Yahushua prophesied gospel from the Old Testament. So you got Gentiles that can do that with your Hebrew Messiah. So you got Gentiles that can do that with your Hebrew Messiah. They can hijack your Messiah, but you can't do it in Africa. But you can't do it in Africa. But you can't do it in Africa. And if that isn't bad enough, you see, these are the arguments you need to take to your teachers. If that isn't bad enough, look at the next theological problem. It's that someone hijacks your Elohim, Jesus or Yahushua. And he actually, not only is it that they get him to do stuff, he actually does it. So apparently, since they say that this Yahushua was in the Old Testament and he was the one that showed Moses' glory and he was the one who did all kinds of other stuff there and he did everything, the Most High, let me not say that because I don't want to be rude on the video, but this, I mean, he refuses in the Old Testament, if he was in the Old Testament, this Yahushua, he refuses to do certain things for his own people, Israel, because they got into transgressions. Basically, they are unclean. And they're worshipping other gods and so on. And they're not keeping the Sabbath and so on. And they're not keeping the holy days and so on. They are unclean. So he won't bless them. And he causes them to not have victory in war anymore and so on. But he comes over to the New Testament now. And he does all these great things for the Romans who they themselves don't keep a day of the Sabbath. They don't keep the holy days. They don't keep the Passover. They do not talk about and teach Torah. They don't do any of these things. But he actually does all these mighty things for them and spreads the gospel under their name, in their hands, under their care and control. And you're telling me this is an Elohim that was there filled with wisdom from the very start, that created the whole earth? That is garbage. 101,000%. Garbage. Let's get back to Exodus 33. So this New Testament Messiah, he does not separate the people of Israel. He groups them all together. So Jew and Gentile, like the New Testament will say, or Hebrews and Gentiles are just going to be accessing his power and his salvation. No big deal. Yet Moses is saying that we are separated based on you. But the Son comes, and even though he said, I'm my Father one and I don't do anything hitherto, so we work together, we do the same things, he somehow does not keep the separation between the people now of Israel and the nations. He somehow does something different against his own word, where he said, I and my Father, we do the same thing, we're one. And his message, he groups everybody together. So that's just weird right there. Now, same chapter, Exodus 33, verse 22. So he's going to show Moses his presence here now. And it says, and it shall come to pass, so he told him before, stand by rock, and it shall come to pass, while my glory passeth by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. Let me give you another example here, people, of how my videos are different in this New Testament is Fake series. The usual video I hear talking about something like this will go and just talk about what the verse means, and to show how this New Testament Messiah is not a part of this verse. They're just going to go by the meaning of the verse. Look at how I approach it now. With a common sense kind of view. That's how I'm going to approach it. The common sense here says to me that this cannot be Jesus, the Son of God, like some are teaching and some elders in Israel that I've heard them say it and teach it, cannot be him. Because if you look in any commentary, probably just about any commentary, it's going to tell you about the glory of God, what it means, and so on. And you are going to know from the description there that in a common sense way, it means the same thing that you have always thought of when you first heard about the glory of God from a child. And when you were sitting in the Christian church and you hear the glory of God, you thought the same thing. When you come into a Hebrew camp, you think the same thing. The glory of God always brings to you, to your mind, some kind of majesty or overpowering or overwhelming presence of the one who you would call the Father relative to the so-called Son in the New Testament. When you hear glory of God, you normally think of. Now, I do admit that because the deception has been so interwoven through time, that there are times, sometimes, you will hear the glory of God and you'll think of Jesus depending on what's being talked about. But most times, when you hear glory of God, you're going to think of the Creator himself, who is more looked at as the Father, not the actual Son. So, common sense tells me that when he says, "It shall come to pass while my glory passeth by," that this is the Father, quote unquote, Father who is speaking and not the Son. So, if he's saying, "while my glory passeth by," then that's telling me, from a common sense perspective, just reading it with the mind that the Creator gave to me, that this isn't talking about Jesus passing by, or Yahweh or Yahushua passing by. It's not him. Get your mind back, people, and stop letting them put garbage interpretations in your mind. This here, when you read it for yourself and you lay down on your own bed and you think of it, you know when my glory passes by, that's talking about the one who you would call the Father, not the Son like they're telling you. Common sense alone tells you that without even going into the Hebrew. So when my glory passes by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I know you're seeing it, but if you don't like to give up your Jesus, you're just going to resist it, but it's not because you cannot see it. Because common sense again here tells me that this kind of talk is common to the quote-unquote Father in the Old Testament, where he talks about my hand, my hand, my hand. It's letting you know it's something he is doing, nobody else. So even if he has a son now, it's just people tricking you, telling you that his arm or his hand is his son. Then now, if you're really saying that the arm of the Lord that brought him out of Egypt means Jesus or Yasha or Yesha or whatever you want to call him is Jesus, then how could this be the same Jesus or Messiah who is saying at the start of the verse that my glory passeth by? So if the bottom part of the verse, with my hand, I'll cover you with my hand, if that hand or arm, then if you want to say, is the Messiah, then the first part of the verse here, if you say the first part is about the Messiah, then what it's really saying is, and it shall come to pass while my Messiah, while my, the Messiah, glory is passing by. So, the Messiah's glory is passing by, that I will put thee in the cleft of a rock and will cover thee with my Messiah while I pass by. You see? Or let's use the word son. If you're saying this is about the son, then that means that the first part of verse 22 is saying that the son is passing by. So my would be relative to the son. But then hand or arm of the Lord would be the son as well. So then the verse would read like this, if you're saying it's the son in this verse. And it shall come to pass that while I the son passeth by, that I the Son will put thee in the cleft of the rock and will cover thee with my Son while I pass by. Do you see the problem that comes in when common sense is used? I mean, come on, people. Come on, man. This is just crazy. But now, here's a point I want to close on. I will cover thee with my hand. The kind of glory, when you look into what glory is dealing with, get out your commentary and read about glory. Get out your dictionaries and look for glory, your Bible dictionaries and commentaries, and read at least something from 2 or 3 different commentaries or dictionaries. When you're dealing with the glory, you're going to deal with the expression of the Creator in a way that we can understand or qualify in some way as being some kind of an expression of him, because we don't normally see him as we see another person standing beside us. So when he is expressing that glory to let you know he is passing by, then he's going to cover you with his hand while he is passing by. Now, this glory, all of us in our mind, that powerful mind that doesn't go wrong until wrong teaching is put into it, because it's the most High give us our mind so that we can understand him. So it's a proper functioning mind. It's just deception that causes the mind to think different stuff. But in the mind that functions the way the Creator gave, when it sees my glory in Scripture, it normally thinks of something overwhelming. So this looks, and the first time as a child I read this about and heard about my glory passing by the mountain and Moses hiding, it always came out to me in my proper functioning mind as a child that this was a big display of the Most High. It is so overwhelming that Moses even has to hide, because the glory is large, it is overwhelming. It is like that Hebrew word gadol, great. It's just all over that area. So he has to hide from it and protect himself from it. It is great, because the presence of the Most High is passing by. While this presence is passing by, it is so overwhelming, and you picture in your mind some great, whatever you think of glory as, it's overwhelming. Whatever you think of it as a cloud or light or combination of both and whatever, it's just big. It's gadol. It's great. When that is happening, you would think that the being associated with that display of great glory is himself great or large or big or something, or he's giving off that amount of greatness at least. So you would expect that if you're going to think of hand in a literal physical way, since this is Jesus, then the hand would have to be big for that big kind of glory. So if he's putting that big hand to cover up Moses, who he has to hide between big rocks, because it has to be big enough to cover and give him some hiding place, so it is bigger than Moses, then the hand must be that big as well, at least to cover up all of that space, to make sure he hides from the gadol glory that is everywhere. It must be a big hand. A great hand. Oh, but brother, it's just his two little eyes, so it doesn't have to be a big hand. Now, let me tell you this. You see how the simplistic kind of information that they give is really deceptive? It keeps the deception alive. Because you're going to tell me that everything here about the description of the glory and the passing by is so great that Moses doesn't just simply hide behind a tree, but he hides in rock, because rock is normally seen as great and big and hard and strong and powerful, hard to crack. So the Most High puts him in a place where something very, very strong and great is going to be. Because it's a strong presence that's passing by. It's a strong Elohim that's passing by. It's a strong, everything is strong about the movement of the Most High and the display right here. And you're telling me he has just a little hand like a man to hide two little beady eyes. You see that? It's not consistent with the greatness of what's going on in the text. So it cannot be a little beanie hand like your hand and my hand, which is the hand that Jesus had when they saw him in Jerusalem, supposedly, that they put 2 nails in. So if that little hand was there from Jesus, it's out of place with the rest of what's going on with the greatness of the text. Now you're going to tell me, well, he was in spirit form. Oh, come on. Let's not start something else here, because I would love to laugh at that some more. They're telling us Jesus was not born in Well, not born. He didn't start in the New Testament. He started in the Old Testament. That means he was already there. So, and if people were seeing him in the Old Testament, then he had a body, which is a problem for me because it sounds like a body came later in the New Testament. He was in spirit form. What exactly is spirit form? Tell me. Because if you say Abraham saw Jesus and Jesus appeared wherever and he was in the lion's den or he was in the fire furnace or wherever they saw him in scripture, in the Old Testament, how can they see spirit with no body? There has to be some kind of form that lets somebody see a spirit. The spirit takes on a form. So if the spirit is in a body, that means Jesus had a body from way back then. Why then does the body need to be born in the New Testament? Because Jesus started in the New Testament. He never appeared in no Old Testament. And he was a regular physical man, if he lived, that came out of a regular physical woman. The same way the rest of us came out, and they came out with regular sized hands. Just like Jesus would have. So from scripture, all that can be proved from all the people who saw him supposedly in the New Testament, if he lived, would be able to tell you that his hands are the size of other men's hands. And I'm sure the Roman soldier wasn't sitting there wondering which few miles of this hand, which part of the miles of this hand do I put the nail in? Because he just had regular sized hands. So the Most High says, Malachi 3:6, I don't change. The way he was a spirit is the way he continued to be throughout the Old Testament. But Jesus supposedly has a body that you can see in the New Testament, but he has some other kind of different way to appear in the Old Testament. A different kind of body. Because if people are seeing him, he must have appeared in a body. So the body wasn't born in Bethlehem, the body was there before. So Jesus is doing some back and forth thing where he's got a body, but then he takes it down because it's to come through Mary, so he reborns the body. And they tell you dumb stuff like, a body has thou prepared for me. I used to preach that stuff when I was in the church, in Bible school. So I'm aware of that verse from the New Testament. That verse actually is letting you think that the body was prepared for New Testament. If they're seeing him appear in the Old Testament, that means he had the body before. So the New Testament is lying to you. But you cannot see the lie because you love Jesus or Yahweh. That is the problem. Common sense, people, that something is fishy about this whole Jesus presence in the Bible. The Romans made this up. And they made it up from what they learned from Egypt. And if you're telling me Egypt is Africa, then Jesus that they're telling you is a European Jesus is an African God. You are worshipping as an Israelite an African God. If you're telling me religions come out of Africa and you're worshipping an African God. No wonder you got kicked out of the land. You are an idolater.